The lid has been rested loosely on top of the simmering pot of this summer of discontent. But don't believe all is sunshine and rainbows between Travis Head and Mohammed Siraj, Australia and India. This test series is festering, and the fine balance between tension and aggression has 3 tests to reach a flashpoint. All it will take is one dubious decision, one ill-timed sledge at the wrong time. Siraj, it seems, has become our new public enemy number 1, as Head savours a well-earned status as hometown hero of the Middle State. A glorious 140 on his home pitch, as he plucked man of the match honours from Australia's pink ball panther, Mitchell Starc. But what of the so-called lies? Channel 7's vision clearly showed Head offering up something a little more spicy than well-bowled mate after Siraj had skiddled his stumps with a Yorker. Let's be honest, the Aussies are world champions at the sledge, or what Steve Waugh called mental disintegration. But we don't seem to like it when it comes the other way.
I'd like to think in our team that we wouldn't do that. It's not how I'd like to play the game, and I feel like my teammates the same. And if I seen that in that circumstances, I'd probably call it out, which I did.
Why was Head so upset with the send-off anyway? He'd just made a big ton. He had the crowd saluting his greatness. The Aussies were well on top. And doesn't it come with the territory with fast bowlers? They take your pole, you get a send-off. Head can do what he likes, but a simple gesture towards the scoreboard might have been a more conciliatory approach. The pair looked to have settled their differences late on day 3. Whether that was purely for optics, we will see. But one thing's for sure, Siraj can now look forward to some hostile reaction at the Gabba, MCG and SCG as the new villain, a replacement for Virat Kohli as he approaches the halfway mark of his farewell test tour of his favourite place to bat. The series is now 1-1 and set up beautifully as India defends the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. Australia is 8 from 8 in day-night tests at the Adelaide Oval after it gave India a taste of its own domination from the West Test. Starc was simply terrifying with the pink missile in hand. Pat Cummins looks back to his lethal best, quick, miserly and masterful, with 5 wickets in India's second innings. Scott Boland delivered in the absence of Josh Hazlewood through injury, and saw all-rounder Mitch Marsh wasn't overtaxed with the ball, and courtesy of the second test ending 2 days early, he gets a couple of extra days to recover. At the top of the order, Nathan McSweeney and Marnus Labuschagne fought their way out of the corner in the toughest of circumstances during that bewitching period at the end of day 1 when day turns into night and Jasprit Bumrah morphs from uber mortal into unplayable god. Usman Khawaja and Steve Smith remain watchers as they struggle for runs, with Sam Constas waiting for his maiden baggy green. While for India, the top order may also require reassembly. Does Rohit Sharma return to the opening slot, forcing KL Rahul back down the order? Harshit Rana's spot in the India attack looks under threat with figures of zip for 86 in the first innings. Will Akash Deep come into the 11 for Brisbane, or will Mohammed Shami join the squad from India? He's not played for India since the ODI World Cup final 13 months ago, and while his playing kit is reportedly on its way to Australia and his visa is stamped, there is swelling in his knee after a recent T20 domestic game. Boxing Day looks a more likely return date, if at all, this summer. Jackson Barrett, cricket writer with the West Australian, joins me. Welcome, Jacko.
Quarters, good to be back.
Mate, before we get into our chat, did you know that summer's here? And so is cricket tipping with the game, mate. We're both on the panel.
We are.
Thanks to McDonald's, you could win up to $26,000 in prizes and bragging rights, Jacko. That's what you and I will be after. So sign up, tip, win. It's that easy. The season's top tipper takes home a cool $20,000, and there are 6 weekly prizes of $1,000 up for grabs. So grab your mates and start a competition now. Sign up at thegame.com.au or download the app today. Now, on to serious matters, Jacko. Who's ahead in this series? I'm calling it India because it's 1-1, 1 thrashing from each side, but they hold the trophy.
Holding the trophy is a good point. Australia need to win the series. They can't draw it. Thinking about it today, I think we've seen more bad stuff from India. Remember, they obviously won convincingly in the first test, but remember they were rolled for 150 They were rolled twice here. With the bat, they've only had one good innings, and it won them a test match, didn't it? So I think that might just have Australia ahead for me. India won at the Gabba the last time they played there. That's where we're off to next.
Won the series at the Gabba last time they played there.
It's bloody hard to pick, isn't it?
It is. It's great. I'm really enjoying it so far. Let's start off with the, I guess, the controversy from the second test. So Mohammed, Siraj and Travis Head antics out in the middle. Now, they both, we believe, it's been reported, they've been found guilty of a breach of the ICC Code of Conduct. There was a lengthy meeting on Sunday night. But we believe, we think they'll get away with a suspended fine or something along those lines. So they're both playing, or they're both available in the next test, and certainly they'll both be picked. So just on the send-off, it's my contention that I think we're a little bit precious, the Aussies, mate. Isn't it a paceman's right to give you a good old-fashioned send-off? And when you're made 140 and your side's well on top, why would you care anyway?
You're right. Australia has a long history of letting batsmen know where they can go after
World
dismissing
champions
them.
at it.
But this was next level. This was like Mohammed Siraj, crazy eyes.
No, it wasn't.
You can get nicked sort of stuff.
That's not crazy
eyes. There was a lot in it.
Dale Stein's crazy eyes. They're just excited eyes.
Travis Head, normally a pretty cool and calm character. He was clearly really disgruntled by it in the 10 seconds afterwards. Obviously, his bid was to hose it down post-play. He had some interesting lines on, he was disappointed, and the classic one that we hear from Australia a little bit over the last couple of years, which is if that's the way they want to go about it, they can do that. And then they move to kind of hose it down. But I thought Head was clearly disgruntled. He had words back to Siraj straight away. I'm not sure they were well bowled, mate.
Oh, they weren't
which
well.
is,
well,
which is what Head said that he said to Siraj.
As Siraj said, liar, liar.
Liar, liar. What I do love, though, is what this series didn't have, for all that it did offer, is your proper public enemy number one touring fast bowler. And now you've got that locked in.
So he's replaced Kohli now.
Well, Kohli, for a long period of time, was that guy. He was snarky. He was always up for a bit of a scrap. But this time around, I feel like the sentiment on Kohli has shifted.
It's a farewell tour of Australia, of his favourite place to bat.
Yeah, I think we're probably romanticising, and rightly so, Kohli's last trip to Australia, and he's got 100 in Perth. And I've never been, as an Australian fan, a massive Virat Kohli man, but I really enjoyed...
I've loved him.
I really enjoyed soaking in what he offered in Perth and the chance that that's the last time we get to see it and that sort of thing. So I feel like Kohli has batted himself into, not batted himself because he's been in poor form, but has moved into this like Tendulkar, Lara territory of let's just soak in what we get to see for the last time, probably the last time here. And I think Siraj has taken it over. Stuart Broad's done it. Dale Stein's done it. Andrew Flintoff's done it. Heaps of guys that are very good cricketers have done it. And he's picked up the mantle. So I like it. I also think...
he can bowl.
I also think Mohammed Siraj sounds like a lovely guy off the field. Like a lot of the Indian guys that you come across in our role in the media, particularly while they're here in Perth, it's really clear that they love their cricket, they love representing India, and they love doing it with their mates. And Mohammed Siraj certainly comes across as one of them. But just... a hot-blooded fast bowler and just one of the great white line fever blow-ups.
Most of them are. The thing is, I mean, I'm as parochial as anyone, but what I've always loved about this India side, particularly this India side with Virat Kohli in the team, is they just give it back as good as they get it. Yeah. And good on them.
I'm not sure, when was the last time we saw an Australian fast bowler with the right in the face, you can go get nicked send off?
McGrath was good. Mitch Johnson was good at it. You're probably right. It's been a while. It's a new breed now, a caring and sharing sort of breed now, as good as they are. I mean, we'll get onto that in a minute because we saw, we spoke about Jasprit Bumrah in the first test, but Mitch Starc's the first innings of this test was something to behold. But I want to talk about something we were discussing last week, and I was almost wishing this on the test. That was India win the toss, bat.
Yep.
We bowl them over relatively cheaply, and out we come in the bewitching period. Lose an early pole, out comes Marnus Labuschagne. So I think what we saw from McSweeney and Labuschagne at the end of day one was pure Test cricket. It was in the corner, all the odds stacked against them, pressure on, and they just got to work. And yes, a couple of chances, but I loved it. It was captivating Test cricket.
Yeah, I really loved it. Bumrah was excellent again. I remember he pushed the first couple of balls. It's actually a pretty meek start. He pushed the first couple of balls across Khawaja, and I kind of thought, oh, it's a bit weird. Like, there are some fitness concerns over Bumrah, but it was kind of like, just didn't feel like Perth did. And then the third ball, I was thinking like maybe he needs to come around the wicket or try something, and he's ripped it across Khawaja, and it's hooped back in and only just missed off stump, and it was kind of like, whoa, all right, like we're on here. And then the thing I loved from India as part of this contest, and we spoke about they're always up for a fight, was that Bumrah bowled 7 overs straight up front with the new ball. He came off for a breather. Then they got Khawaja out, and they pulled the trigger on Labuschagne, on Bumrah straight away to come in and bowl to Labuschagne. So I love that they just went, this is our matchup. This is our guy. He's going to come straight back on and battle through it. Siraj did the same thing, like a short break and then back in because they felt Labuschagne was vulnerable. And he batted really, really well. It didn't look super convincing at the start, but once he settled in and then he did the hard yards and make hay when the sun shines, next morning it's early afternoon, beautiful day. India's got some overs in the legs. We talked about how quickly the air can go out of these balls. And he did just that, and he capitalised. We spoke a lot about last week, and some very, very good top order batters and some cricket minds spoke about Labuschagne not quite being assertive enough and looking to score off enough balls. There was some really good data around and some graphics on Channel 7's coverage around where he was meeting the ball, and he was getting further forward to hit the cricket ball. So you can leave and that be an assertive way of batting.
Of course.
And he did that, but he was getting further forward to meet the ball. And he did say that that's something that he'd been working on. And he also said that he went back to Queensland. We saw that the vision and the photos of him batting in the nets at Allan Border Field. He said he went back with a really clear program about he wanted to leave the nets each day having got better at something, at one of his issues. So massive, massive credit to Marnus, the way he went about that. There was probably 100 for the taking, and he hasn't had one for a while. He scored that 90 in New Zealand. It feels now, though, like potentially on the cusp of a big score. And the records won't show it, but that 60 was as valuable as any 100.
Sometimes they are, and it set Australia up beautifully too. A really pivotal point of the test. McSweeney too, 39. It's not a double ton, but I like the way he was forced just to battle through it. And I think that it's like Kevin Sheedy always says in the AFL, he likes to debut players on Anzac Day because it's worth about 10 games experience. I reckon that innings is about worth 10 test innings in experience. Just really tough conditions and finding your way through it.
And for what it's worth, I think Perth is worth something as well. He's seen Bumrah. He's had the experience of walking out onto a test venue to face this Indian attack. Because remember, he's not a guy that's played a lot of white ball cricket or short form cricket. He's not like a Josh Inglis might be at some point in this series where he's been facing Bumrah for 5 years in different competitions. McSweeney isn't that guy. He's been facing shield bowlers and big bash bowlers. So I think that experience in Perth, as much as it didn't go his way, would be just as valuable. And then I think the thing with McSweeney, and similar to Labuschagne, is once you're a little bit more assertive, you can't take the ball. Actually, Bo Webster spoke about this before the test. He wants to take the ball away from off stump. So if I play my shots, they've got to bowl somewhere a little bit differently. And I felt like McSweeney did that. McSweeney wasn't facing 4 balls in the over that were hooping back into all his pads because they were having to find different ways to bowl at him. So credit to him. He's one that he probably did miss out on cashing in when there were runs to be made on Saturday on day 2, and he'd be flat about that because he deserved it and he did the hard yards.
You said, Labuschagne, there was probably a century there for the taking. Well, cometh the moment, cometh the hour, cometh the man. Travis Head took it, 140 runs, a magnificent knock. He's making a habit of this, isn't he?
Marnus
loves Adelaide too.
Yeah, we love in WA, we love Mitch Marsh. We love our Scorchers boys. We love the WA boys. But I don't think there's anything quite like Travis Head batting in Adelaide. He had this great line in a radio interview where he retold the story of his old man watching Brian Lara make 100, and he reckons his dad saw Brian Lara go from 0 to 1 and 99 to 100, because everyone spends the rest of the day at the back of the members at the Adelaide Oval. And he said that he could see the terraces filling up as he worked his way through the 80s, and he thought, I better get on with it here because they're all itching to get back out the back. So not shocking for Travis Head, but priority is on making sure that everyone has a good time, which I think is the type of bloke he is, and it was a special innings to watch.
It was. And look, we'll get into some crowds in a little bit, but let's give some credit to Adelaide, or South Australia in particular. They've done it. We sort of snubbed our noses at them when they took on Live Golf. Well, that proved a success. They took on Gather Round. Well, that's been a raging success. And the festival atmosphere around this Test match, record 135,000 across to not even 3 days. So wonderful. What they do, a good show now, South Australia.
What do you make of the pink ball test being taken off them for the Ashes? That was probably the jolt for me in next year's Ashes schedule.
Don't like it at all. They've set up an established product that people love. Big mistake.
I understand the thinking that Adelaide is a good test regardless of when it's played. I think it's better. It certainly comes across as being better during the day. And I think Brisbane is well entrenched as the fifth of 5 test venues at the moment.
Why can't we have 2 pink ball tests?
Well, that's true. That's the other factor. I would imagine that comes down to negotiations with the touring side.
Yeah, well, Australia 8 for 8 for Adelaide Oval. And what's the overall record of the Aussies? Have just got a...
Yeah, so it's 11 for 12 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
No wonder we want to play more.
And the one they lost was at Brisbane.
Well, if the public like it, and they do, I think you go with it. So we'll go on to India in a moment, but let's just the remaining of the Australian top order. So Khawaja and Steve Smith yet to be convinced. Steve Smith, where are we at?
The way Steve Smith batted when he was absolutely in his pomp in, between 2015 and 2019, you always felt like it was so reliant on the hand-eye stuff. So the way he'd walk across the stumps, or he'd get leg side of the ball, and the way he'd run his wrists through the ball and that sort of thing was always like, this guy's just got a brilliant eye. He's now late 30s, clearly in the twilight of his career. I think there's a real risk that with Steve Smith more than any of these guys that the cliff comes really quickly. And I certainly hope not. And we said the same thing about Labuschagne, and then he went and did what he did. I'm less confident in Steve Smith being able to do that. I don't think it's panic stations for Smith. He scored a 90 in Brisbane, or a good score in Brisbane at the end of last summer. So he's made runs relatively recently. But the heat will certainly turn to Smith now if he fails in Brisbane. He's someone that they're likely to persist with, but alarm bells are going off a little bit just the way he's getting out. So he's always been someone that's pretty happy to feel at a ball down the leg side, but just the way he kind of feathered that one pretty tamely through to Rishabh Pant the other day was a pretty flattening way to get out. Khawaja is struggling against the new ball. I thought they bowled better balls at McSweeney early in the innings, and then once Khawaja, they sort of honed in on Khawaja a little bit. He went as well for 13. So that was a disappointing dismissal. Probably Smith is concern number one. You could probably group him in a little bit with Labuschagne after Perth. Labuschagne's batted his way out of it. Smith hasn't yet. So big test for Steve Smith in Brisbane.
If I can cross sports codes here, there's a theory with marathon running, and particularly slow marathon running. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Very slow marathon. You can run an extra 5K. You can do the Rottnest swim and swim an extra 3K. I just got a theory about Steve Smith. He must be exhausted at the end of a day's play. The fidgeting, the carrying on. I reckon it's worth another innings while you're out there.
There's a lot.
It's exhausting for him. It's exhausting to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Rafael Nadal's the guy that he gets compared to a little bit. It's just an all-in experience. And a lot of batters in particular talk about switching off between balls. I heard Chris Rogers talk about the water tank once. And you start your innings with a water tank, and you've got to turn the tap off when you're not facing the ball, and you turn it on when the bowler's running in, and then it's straight off again, whether you're walking square leg, whatever, whether it's chatting to your mate,
tapping the pitch, whatever,
picking people out of the crowd, whatever you're doing, you got to turn that tap off while you're not batting. And Smith it just feels like an all-in experience, doesn't it? And then he's got this brilliant cricket mind and a captaincy brain, so he's not switching off entirely in the field either. And we know that Cummins leans on him a lot, so. Yeah, I think it's a really good point you make. I think a test match would be a pretty gruelling experience inside that head of his.
Now, Travis Head, rightly player of the match, but I tell you what, he wasn't that far ahead of Mitch Starc. I thought set the tone with the first ball of the match. Magnificent ball, and what a great first innings effort, 6 wickets.
We've got a pretty incredible job where we get to spend a lot of time watching sport, and one of my favourite hobbies is to just find some random crap on Crick Info sometimes. Mitchell Starc, 3rd wicket with the first ball of a test match in his career, equals the record of a man named Pedro Collins.
Pedro,
great name.
Yes.
Half-brother of Fidel Edwards, another West Indian fast bowler.
Yes.
Pedro played 32 tests for the West Indies, and before Starc levelled him, was the lone holder of this record.
Green tops in the Caribbean, no doubt.
You'd think so.
Terrifying green tops.
All 3 were in Bangladesh. All 3 were the same batter. This poor Bangladeshi opener, his name escapes me, but in a test in 2002 and then back-to-back tests in 2004, Pedro Collins has his measure with the very first ball of the test. So he held that record by dismissing the same bloke 3 times with the first ball of test matches.
Who were Mitch Starc's 3?
Karunaratne in 2016, clipping a ball to mid-wicket in Gaul. Rory Burns with the first ball of the most recent home Ashes. And then this one. He also had Prithvi Shaw, the second ball in Adelaide the last time India played Australia in Adelaide. And famously, Brendan McCullum, 3rd ball of the World Cup final. So he's the first over king.
Well done. You've passed the test. That's very impressive.
Thanks.
You win a box of Junior Mints for that.
Did you have the answers down there?
No.
You didn't, did you?
No, I was just testing
So
you.
I could be just running out names here.
I can see the intent and the honesty in your eyes there.
Very good.
I trust you. Let's talk about the Indian batting. So Sharma 3 and a 6. Hasn't had a good run leading into the test. A bit of interruption with the birth of his second child. Gets over here late. Do they reshuffle him back up to that opening spot, and does Rahul come down? What do they do?
I'm unsure. My gut says probably no. I think Rahul showed enough in the first innings to suggest that that's probably his spot for a little while. I think Rohit Sharma will play certainly will play in Brisbane, but I think he's taking a real risk by sacrificing himself down the order, which we believe those discussions were kind of led by him, and he said that this is an option. Good captain. But I think he's now at risk of falling out of this side, unfortunately. He didn't play well against New Zealand. He hadn't played well for a period before that. And he's at real risk here because they've got other options in the middle order, of course.
Nitish Kumar Reddy, 42 and 42?
Yeah, they've got guys, and with Pant, they've got guys that can take games away from you in a session, and Sharma doesn't look like doing that at the moment. Convinced he'll be better for the run, but yeah, I think there's some concerns there for sure. Okay,
what about the attack? So Rana, none for 86. Shami, we know still, I think his kit's on the way. His visa's been stamped, but he's still over in India. A bit of swelling on the knee. They're saying now unlikely Brisbane, but possibility Melbourne.
Yeah, I think that's where it stands at the moment. So there's a slightly bigger break between Brisbane and Melbourne. Melbourne, obviously, Boxing Day. Rohit Sharma said in his post-match presser that there is a little bit of swelling on the knee. There was an image of him playing a one-day game for Bengal where he had gone down with what appeared to be a new knee issue. That wasn't as serious as images kind of suggested it might be, so they survived that scare. I think there's a real chance. They certainly want him in there, particularly after Harshit Rana's display. I mean, he was fine in Perth. He was pretty good in Perth. He bowled at a decent clip and he was aggressive and he took it up to the Aussies. But I think they'll be a little worried about what they saw second up from him in Adelaide. He just wasn't able to control the ball and didn't know where to bowl to Travis Head. He was kind of the main culprit during Travis Head's 140. Head found it pretty easy to take him down, and he didn't really look like threatening blokes at the other end either. So I think they'll be a little bit concerned about taking Nitish Kumar Reddy and Harshit Rana into a test. They debuted them in the same match in a bid to kind of deepen their batting order. But you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul with those sort of things as well. So I think they'll probably be a little bit worried about what that means for the attack and where they sit. I think there might be a change with Rana.
And with Australia, Josh Hazlewood, the first of what will be a few, I would assume, fitness tests today.
Yep.
So he comes back in. It's a distinct possibility now. Scott Boland, the unlucky player who will make way, who bowl well.
I think so. There's no way they play four seamers anywhere in Australia at the moment. So, yeah, one of them will miss out. Starc was great. Cummins took 5. It'll be Boland. He was good. He was really good. He actually, at the start of both innings, he changed the game with his first
Took
spell.
a pole with his first ball, but of course it was
no
a
ball. And then went and did it properly in the second innings.
Did.
So, yeah, he's got an ability to... I think the great thing about this series is there are guys that can change the test match in a session, and it means you have to watch every session.
Which is why we love it so much, which is why the next 3 tests are so compelling.
Big. Yeah. And I think Boland will probably miss out for Hazlewood. But remember, the gap between Melbourne and Sydney is only a couple of days as well if either of those go the distance. So there's a chance he'll play again.
And the good point about this test, of course, it finished early. So Mitch Marsh, who didn't have to bowl too much, and players like Hazlewood, you get the extra 2 days to get yourself ready. So that's good. Just on the test itself, so the obligatory calls now for 4-day tests because the first 2 have been over early. I think there was a test across the ditch that was over early, New Zealand, England. But I'm a five-day man. I really am. I think we saw with 135,000 in Adelaide, and I think we saw 2 record day crowds in WA. I think the appetite's still out there for Test cricket, and it's 5 days for a reason. It's a test called a test for a reason.
Yeah, I agree. I'm all for sticking with 5 days. I don't mind the transition to some 4 days in games or in matches where they feel like it might be necessary between some of the more emerging nations, but particularly these sort of series. I think we probably just need to come to accept that, clearly we've had 2 very contrasting results here. Test cricket is in fast forward at the moment. Run rates have gone up. The World Test Championship doesn't really incentivise drawing games, so you have to risk losing a game to win a game, which means we're going to have results like this all the time. Like teams are following the Travis Head blueprint of having guys, or Rishabh Pant, Harry Brook, guys at 5, 6, 7 that can take a game away from an opposition. And that's kind of the model now is you have your more traditional openers, and then you've got guys in the middle order that a lot of them have white ball backgrounds, and they can lift the rate and flick switches in games. So I just think, we'd love close test matches. I think close test matches are going to become rarer. Close series are going to become a regularity, particularly between the big 3 nations at the moment. We're going to have to wear a couple of 3 and 4 day test matches though, but that's just where cricket's at.